Pasha Paroh, Y7, Shelly, back in the house. How's all with you today?
Oh, excellent, excellent. As you say, today's a perfect day.
Always a perfect day. Always a perfect day.
Yep.
So I want to get with today's title is gonna be, and thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. We're gonna rock out with the conversation titled "Prisoners of View: Shattered Illusions, Life's POV." Right? Because a lot of people a lot of people's lives, whether they realize it or not, are built around their perspective of the environment or what they may call life that they're intertwined with, wrapped around them. And for many people, whether they realize it or not, they actually have beliefs in an illusion of some sort versus reality when it comes to work, career, family relationships, education, health and wellness, finances. What how does that on a high level overview stir your mind when you hear that?
Well, there's several levels to this because we got to take into account how everybody's perception is different. And we also have to take into account the different frequencies that we're on. People can only be reached at the energy or frequency they're at. So there's so much that some people can't even perceive because of the energy level that they're at. So it's like, it's not only subjective to their personal perception, but also to the extent of what they're able to be aware or cognitive of. So this is a very, broad subject in the sense where we could get into, the perception of people. We can get into even like the foods being fake. We could get into even, people's personas, personalities, even down to the BBLs and the plastic lips. And there's so much within this reality that is an illusion. We can even get into the how some people identify as furries, or some people identify as whatever they identify as, a doorknob. I don't know. We have these so many things based off of people's own perception or mental whatever it is you want to call it. I don't want to offend anybody, but yeah, this subject, there's levels to this. So when you ask me that question, the main thing I think of is the frequencies and the perception of different people, and how in the illusion there's several different illusions going on.
Right. The matrix itself. I like the fact that you brought up frequencies, and I think that'll be a safe view of the infinity and the different variables within. And the truth absolutely will offend some people for various reasons. So don't hide the truth, to spare their offense. Let's just focus on what the truth is. I want to go over a few subjects, like I mentioned, work, career, family relationship, education, health, wellness, finance, leisure even, right? And then I want to get into some more broader topics that'll bleed in and out of those, like absolute freedom, meritocracy, equality, opportunity, right? Objective reality, social mobility, the concept of having a level playing field, post-racial society, perfection, the objective beauty clause, and of course, happily ever after. And you already mentioned food, so I think we'll have a lot of topics to bleed in and out of here and showcase to people how they may have been had, and that's causing strife on their emotions. So when you think of work and career, being a significant focus of many Americans slash and or U.S. citizens, and generally speaking around the world, their employment and career advancement the concept of what job security is in a fake currency world, right? Where everything's intertwined in the economic situation, the pursuing quote unquote professional growth opportunities, and just looking for overall financial stability. How do you think the illusion and what illusions actually pertain or hide themselves parasitically in that idea of life, in that aspect of life?
Well, here's the thing. If we take a look at history, we can see the, like, I guess you could say cycles of how things were. At one point, it was a lot of living off the land and living off of nature. Then you get into certain periods of I guess you could say the Renaissance ages where, there were still farmers and things, but there was more of a, hierarchy and things of that sort. And then you get into this, day and age, which has grown from when American, first started with, it did start with a lot of farms, but now we have a lot of technology, a lot of, like you said, everything's around, like currency and more or less like machines. I think that in itself is dying away at this moment. I think we're coming into a new cycle. Clearly, we already know that the American dollar is like nearly shot. We already know that there's talks of going into cryptocurrency. There's talks of, getting chipped. As it is, I don't believe, if you think about how our workforce is right now today, it wasn't even like this maybe 40 or 50 years ago. You know what I'm saying? And I don't think it's going to be like this for much longer because what do they call it? They say that a lot of millennials or people are now lying flat, which means they're just not working at all because they've gotten so we're not meant to do this rat race. That's and I'm not saying we're not meant to work because we very much are. We are meant to work. We are meant to, daily have some type of activity, but to be almost forced. And we, in a way, you could say, well, we have a choice. But then, like we spoke of before, if you want to live, if you want to have a house, if you want to, be able to be cool in the summertime, have food on your table, there's no natural resources. So therefore, we are forced, if we want to have these things, to play in this rat race. And a lot of people are realizing this is where a lot of their, I guess you could say depressive or anxious thoughts or unhappiness, discontentment with life comes from. Because when you really think of the 40-hour work week, which is what we're, presented, which is what they say it should be, right? We're supposed to sleep for 8 hours. We're working for 8 hours. You got to take into consideration to and from work. And then, if you're a mom, a husband, whatever, you have to also squeeze all of that into the other 8 hours, not even taking into consideration your spirituality. You know what I'm saying? Which that's a very big and vital part of us as humans. And I think that's part of why we suffer so much is because we've completely flipped it from, anything spiritual to everything material. But I see it phasing out. I see a new cycle coming in. I don't know exactly which way it's going to go, but I don't see the system as it is standing much longer due to the fact of, how it's affecting people and how many more people are starting to wake up, realizing they're working, a quarter or half of their life to make somebody else $1 million. We're not even seeing the fruits of what we're laboring on, not even in a fraction of a sense, but because again of the way it's constructed here, we have to choose, whether we are going to work or whether we're going to, be homeless. And for most of us, we decide we're going to work.
So let me inject here. With that being said, relative to the subject of work and career, right? If we go and marry that with the meritocracy, right? If I'm pronouncing that word right, where the belief that the success is solely based on the individual merit can overlook systemic advantages and disadvantages that impact opportunities and outcomes, right? So when you bring up the currency system being a trap, the workplace itself being a trap, people investing in lives, education, etc., only to get caught in the trap and still not be able to utilize their their skill set, right?
Yes.
Add in a factor that people not having a degree or something don't mean they're not highly skilled in a particular subject, self-studied, self-taught, hung around people long enough that are of that industry or culture or network to be well versed in it themselves. Can you share your thoughts on whether a true meritocracy exists in society, considering the influence of factors like privilege, biases, and systemic barriers?
Well, I think that what you're, however you pronounce it, you said I'm not even going to try to repronounce
Right.
it, but I think that's how they get us. Yeah, no, that's how they get us. It's the, you know, it's the illusion that there is some type of rank or some type of reward system, when really there's not, because of what you just said. A lot of times people don't even get chosen based off of their skill or off of their professionalism, or even their I'm trying to think of a word. My cat just walked up on me. Yeah, they don't even get picked off of that. A lot of times, especially in high positions, you know, we're talking the positions that are really matter in this country. You know, those are gotten through, you know, they're illy gained, or they know somebody that knows somebody. You know, it's never by their personal it's never by their personal achievements, never. So when we look at that, it goes back to yet another, like you said, trap. You know, we're entering this race with the thought and the hopes to, you know, climb the corporate ladder, or, you know, get in these positions that are really going to make a difference, not only you know, with what we can do in those positions, but even in our financial, in our pockets. But you know, we come to find that when we get into these you know, agencies or certain offices, or, you know, even political parties, we come to find that, you know, all of our hard work and education that we paid for, or even took the time to learn, we realized it didn't really make a difference, because we see people that are being chosen for these positions that don't have half of what we, you know, worked hard or went to school for, but maybe they just know the owner, or it's the CEO's daughter's husband, you know. And so it's like that's all, again, part of the whole illusion, and that is part of the trap. And I'm just kind of glad that we're watching the end of it. You know, we're on our way out of this cycle and into another, and that's very clear, because things are collapsing. You know, they say we're going into another recession, depression, however, you know, they want to call it. They say that's where we're headed. And, you know, it has to go. It has to collapse before the new could come. Now, I do hope, with the minds that are arising in today's society, that we come into a far better ideal of society, because, again, we know it's all an illusion regardless. Even as you get into the truth, it's still subjective based on perception, you know? And I remember one time you said something. You said, yes, the whole truth. And one time you said, I think it was like multidimensionally, or however, you know, in a sense, all things can connect to something within the different, you know, aspects of the multi-universe. But yeah, so that, yeah,
when I on that real quick. So when the thing I see with people is, when you ever tell someone the truth and then they be like, oh, well, that's your truth, or that's your opinion. And see, that's where we as a whole have went wrong, is for those that think that it's okay for someone to have their own truth. I'm not gonna say, well, how do I say okay? For someone to label it as that's their truth, right? Has detached themselves from the reality that whatever they're probably saying is a part of the whole truth in a different perspective, in a perspective of angles, right?
But that's the word that should be said, is their perspective. It shouldn't be truth, because here's the deal. Even with all of the different you know, things, as far as our different perception, as far as, You know, who is at what energy level and what frequency can they pick up? There is still a universal law that doesn't matter what perception frequency. You know, there's still universal and natural laws that have nothing to do with opinion or perception that are regardless. So I can agree with you when you say the truth, because there is a truth, there is a source, there is a truth, and there are certain laws that can't be bended no matter what you think, feel, or perceive things at.
Right. So what happens is people think that there's I guess we could easily say it like this. There's two types of thought. There's the thought that what I say is all, right? When it's not, when it's a part of the all. And then it's the people that can say, I can accept that there's what I know, and I'm okay with saying I don't know what I don't know, because I know together that creates the whole of the truth. And then you can see how it all fits together and remain true in your statement versus what is truly opinionated based on a limited view or perspective, which makes you a prisoner based on you only know so much, and then you think that's the totality, right?
Right. And I think that's why it's so important to have an open mind. And that's not to say just to let anything in, but be open in a sense to where you allow yourself to not listen to respond, but listen to understand, and listen to maybe even soak in some of the things that you're listening to. Because without an open mind, you're never going to get none of it. Like a closed, or even a natural mind, a closed and natural mind is not going to receive some of these things. When it comes to, you know, the truth and the things that may have been hidden from us by the worldly authorities, you know, there is higher realms. You know, I don't want to get into a religious way of speaking on this, but there is a source, there is a creator, and there is ascended that do, I guess you could say, relay things through us to us within revelations, messages, you know, visions. I know everybody doesn't receive those, but there are people who do. And we could look back in history at these great minds, and even Albert Einstein or Plato, Da Vinci, you know, there's so many great minds that we can see were obviously touched by a higher programming. You know, they come from a higher programming than what we witness around us. And this is where they start revolutions, not in a sense of physical, but in a sense of mental. And I think I'm going off on a rabbit hole right now, so I'm going to let you catch it back and bring me back to the ground.
Hey, look, I like where you're at right now, because I think what that does is it creates a great segue to, I'm gonna go back to that infamous word you used, frequency, right? And it dawned on me right after I said it earlier when I said the different angles. So we could substitute angles in that description earlier for different frequencies of mentality. And the thing when you get into the quantum physics world is that you have to be on a subatomic level or quantum level. You have to be of the same resonance in order to coexist with knowledge of what's around you. They all have to be in the same frequency. Once you get it beyond a certain frequency, they're unaware of each other's existence, which is kind of like how ghosts could actually be a thing in this realm that we're in, because they're vibrating on a different frequency at a different parallel universe. So they're walking through walls and we're like, oh shit, there's a wall there, walk right through it. But in reality, the wall wasn't there to them, and we just caught a glimpse of their whole existence. But what I want to ask you and tie that into is this, right? Absolute freedom. So while individuals may have certain degrees of freedom, right, complete and absolute freedom is often limited by laws, societal norms, and other constraints. So when you mentioned how having an open mind and the pressure of the supposed authority figures and all that stuff, right? We just went over work and career. We showed that part. We're probably going to dive into family and relationships next. But look at how, in your opinion, share with us, how does the concept of absolute freedom intersect with the reality of social constraints and personal responsibilities with these different illusions? How do you think that bleeds over top of each other?
There is none. If you really think about it, there is no absolute freedom. And at the end of the day, we are meant to be sovereign beings. We are meant to have control over our personal bodies, thoughts, feelings. Like we are meant and supposed to, God given, have that, creator given, have that. And we don't have that because, let's just look at what happened recently. And it's not even just recently, because we know, even for the kids to go to school, they have to be vaccinated. You can't just say, I don't want my child to be vaccinated. You have to go through a whole, huge thing, get paper signed, doctors, whatever, even if you just don't want your kid to be vaccinated. It shouldn't be like that. And when you think about it, even for those of us who are on a path of healing and who are on a path of searching for the full truth and nothing but the truth, even us, like, let's just face it, we go out into the society daily with our mask on in a way. Now, not to the extent where we're being fake and we're not being ourselves, but in a sense where, let's face it, I cannot just go to my job or outside and just have a conversation like I'm having with you with anybody, because they're not ready to receive this. They're half of them aren't even on this frequency. They're not even going to hear half of it because they're going to just be like, whoa. So it's like, even if I wanted to fully be free and be my full self, going around talking about how I have these crazy moments and the higher ups not talk to me because I don't hear voices. I couldn't even go out and say something like that. I could never be my full free self, not because I don't want to be, but because it wouldn't be received. So in a sense, I don't think we're ever able to truly fully be free at all in the way that this is constructed. Now, do I feel like there will be a time where we might be able to fully exercise ourselves? Yeah, because I do feel like, the word apocalypse means the unveiling. So we already know that things that, have been hidden are starting to come about. Things that me and you might have been privy to 3 years ago, the rest of the world is starting to figure out now. So it's like, I do believe we are going to get to a point where the earth itself is going to get to such a frequency that anything that's not on that frequency is going to fall off. So essentially, we're all going to be more on a same level than what we've probably previously witnessed in the last several thousand years as an earth, a society, humans interacting. So I do believe we will get to a point where we could be freer than we are. But at this point right now, we can never fully be free. There's too many restrictions, too many ideas of how things should be, too much. There's just too much.
The clutter, I think, and I'm glad you brought all those examples up, because I think the clutter is actually in the individual mentality. Because again, if we go back to what frequency you represent or what angle you on, right? What state, when we start looking at these words, we know that there's spells, and what state are you in is not just solely referring to, are you a U.S. citizen or American? Are you a citizen of the United States, or are you a citizen of the state of Arizona or California, right? That's not, or Nevada. So there's different states, just like there's different states of mind. So I think what is important that we must accept is that perspective, right? We have to shatter the illusion that there's not absolute freedom, because we have to accept that they're only able to operate because of the free will clause. The trickery is in getting the people to believe that it's their free will how they're winding up in these positions. So maybe it's not that we don't, because maybe we do have free will or absolute freedom, we just not executing it properly as a whole. So depending on what frequency you're on, whole truth or partial truth, right? The belief, which is narrow, not the full truth, you stand on, the way it's said in application is jurisdiction determines status. Just like they could say nationality determines what law applies to you. So if the people believe they're a United States citizen, then they have to accept the privileges and limitations that come with being property of the United States. If they know that they're American and they're a national sovereign, then you exercise your absolute freedoms based on your jurisdiction. You're in a separate jurisdiction. You're in a separate frequency, right? A separate vibration. So it's important to share with others, I think, Shell, even when you go to work or when you go to these places that are strange, or not to say strange, but different vibration, because one, it allows them to understand you as an individual better, right? Because they're going to try to apply and administer their beliefs onto you to get you to fit in, and they're going to feel like something's wrong with you and us and me, unless we say, hey, well, you know what, I wouldn't have imposed this on you, but let me tell you why I think different. And be able to go to the books, be able to go to the United States Code, be able to go to the Black's Law Dictionary, be able to go to whatever your source is and show them, well, see, despite what you believe, right, here's the truth, not my opinion, right, not my truth, but this is the book they go to when they want to reference the reality of what you're talking about right here. This is their book, right? So this is the truth. So I may sound a little strange to you, or I may act a little different, but here's why: because you guys are emotional, right? You have emotional attachments to beliefs without knowledge of the whole truth. All right. So I think that's important, because one, it helps them learn how to operate with you in whatever relationship you have, whether it's work relationships, boyfriend, girlfriend, family. And also it'll help us get to a critical mass of understanding, because we don't need everybody to convert to this for it to take into effect and change the world. We just need to reach a critical mass. So now that we're here with all this meat on the table, how does this tie into family? Because family and relationships in general, building up and maintaining strong relationships with family members, friends, and romantic partners is often a central focus of the people in this society, and I guess around the world. So people invest time, effort into nurturing these connections. They want to create support systems and fostering personal well-being, but the issue is, or the danger is, if they're not in tune with the right frequency, if they're in tune with one of these fractal existences where they're being controlled and manipulated and they don't even know why, they're going to, through normative social influence, expect you to convert and go along with the flow, right? I heard the saying, the only thing that go along with the flow is dead fish. So how does this tie into keeping a family, and or when do you say, you know what, I gotta let go of family too?
So here's the deal. Like, oh my God, you just touched on a subject that is very heavy for me. So, I mean, all my life, I guess you could say it's always been spiritually led, where I was always off to myself. As an early age, I would, kind of run away. And as an adult, I was always in another state other than my family. Well, now I have children. And now we know why, because I had to go through this, I guess you could say, training that was just, like I said, it's led by, a higher source. And now that I have children and I have, a certain dynamic where I'm not, necessarily in a relationship, but their father helps me. And we do cohabitate, for the, for whatever reasons. And I'm kind of like the oddball, where, they're a little bit, because my children are 12 and my daughter that's here is 6. And I have another child. We're just speaking on my household dynamic just to get the point across. Needless to say, I'm like the oddball. I'm on a whole different frequency. And then a lot of times I feel like I allow myself to be thrown off by their frequency, because we're on two different pages. And it's really hard. A lot of times I realize that I'm either conforming to their thing, or I'm off in my room by myself, because I guess it goes back to, if you've never gotten to a certain frequency, you couldn't even understand it. So I have been at that frequency before, so it's easier, I guess, for me to somewhat conform at times, because I've been there, but they can't even try to be on my frequency because they've never even experienced it.
Right.
So it's extremely hard. And I would say there's prices that are paid with that. There's times where I am just so completely out of my energy because I have to deal with my family, which are my children that I take care of. And I'm not saying I don't love my children. I'm saying where they're at and their understanding of things. You know, we've crossed a certain threshold that I would say 90% of people haven't crossed. And I don't know everything. There's still words I don't know. There's still a lot of like the stock market stuff that I'm not even fully into. Like there's so many things that I'm not privy on, even though we've come to a certain point where, like I said, 90% of people haven't come to. And I know that you are the same way. You know, a lot of people don't get to the point that we're at when it comes to searching for things, whether it be through, you know, studying in the economic or geographical things, or whether it be studying into the more spiritual, you know, abstract type of things. A lot of people don't get to this point. So in a sense, we're like, I guess we're always going to be, until we get to that critical mass that you speak of, we're always going to, I guess you could say, feel like the oddball out, or feel like we have to maybe lower our frequency a little bit to get with our people.
Danger.
It's not easy. I mean, you know, we were supposed to have this conversation last week, but because of the different frequencies and things going on, it was impossible for me to be able to give this, you know, my full effort. And I had to, you know, reschedule with you, but it was because of that very matter, being on a whole different frequency than my household, and still trying to maintain a household and maintain a household of love. You know, I'm very big on love. You know, my kids, we say it 100 times a day. As much as we fuss, we're I love you that just as much, you know. So yeah, it's not easy. And oh God, you really touched me with this question. You know, it also makes me sometimes feel like I have not failed, but like on the days where my energy is not where I think it should be, and I'm maybe lowering myself, I feel like I have disconnected myself, you know, from the alignment of sovereignty and the source in a way when that happens. And I mean, I have to in order to communicate. And like I said, you know, the only way they're going to learn is through, you know, me continuing with them there. So I do have to come down to their level at times. It's not easy though. Yeah. I'm going to let you go.
Hey, look, I can totally relate, and I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, you said something speaking about the dynamics of the show, and you were like, you know, I had to reschedule. And what that made me think of is how many times do people in life feel like they need to reschedule something that was, and I'm not saying this show comes before your family, but I'm talking about, I'm gonna use the comparison for things people are wanting to do in life. Like, let's say their dreams, their goals, whatever it may be, right? Their desires in life, and they keep putting them off. Like, they'll reschedule it because they're trying to appease the people around them, right? And then it's not saying this is what you did or anything like that. So what I'm saying is, for the people watching, this is how easily this same thing happens in life, because we're talking about the family osmosis factor, right? And when you expand outside of the household, the same outcasting events and feelings happen on a larger scale when you're dealing with society. I can tell you firsthand, when I first got into the study of like law for entertainment purposes and who we really are, knowledge of self and all this, and I was running around, because the first thing you do when you come across something great, whether it's financial or knowledge-based wisdom, whatever, is you want to share it with the people you care about the most.
Oh, most definitely.
So you go running around, you're telling everybody you care about because you want them to be free too. Like, you feel like, wow, I just broke free of something, right? Let me break everybody else free. Harriet Tubman, right? And so you go around and then they're calling you crazy and something wrong with you because, again, they haven't reached that frequency yet. They haven't discovered, they haven't been on that journey. They haven't arrived where you are. So now you're trying to pull them out too, right? And I remember in the beginning for me, like all of my family and like 80% of the people I knew like turned their back on me because it was like, nah, man, you're crazy. Something's wrong with you. You're talking about not being a U.S. citizen. You're talking about this. You're talking about that. It wasn't until, believe it or not, I went and had the first court case that I won by myself, sitting there with my on my own, my little briefcase and my Constitution and Bill of Rights books and a red hoodie on, right? 6 state prosecutors over there, the judge over here, and he stood up at the end and he said, before I give you the deliberation, I wanna tell you, and he gave this whole little speech, right? And then at the end, he started out, oh, everything you said is true, and this, that, and the other, blah, 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 blah. Because I was basically in that when I won the case on the right to travel versus being a driver. I got, pulled over with no license, no insurance, no registration, and I won the case. But what he was saying at the end was, he was like, because we have the right to travel as an American, right? Versus claiming to be United States citizen and the privileges that come assigned to that. But anyway, so what it is at the end of that case, he was like, so everything you said in the case was right. You very well put together, this, that, and the other, da 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 da. And he closed his speech, his monologue with, and I wish more Americans would come in here and do this. And then he gave me a standing ovation, and the prosecutor's table stood up and gave me an ovation too. And then they came over at the end and said, hey, you should consider becoming an attorney. And I said, I can't do that because it'll change my status. And we all laugh, right? So, because they know what that means. So the people that didn't have a clue laughed, ridiculed, turned their back on you. But when you go talk to the so-called experts or the specialists, they all know what you're talking about.
So well, they say that ignorance is 9/10 of the law. Like they play off of people's ignorance.
Exactly.
That's how
let me give you the floor here. Let me give you the floor here. So if I hung on to try to appease my friends and my family, I basically would not be who I am today, right? So the question is here, I have this question for you now. Our perception of reality is subjective, influenced by our experiences, biases, and cultural backgrounds, making it difficult to establish a universally objective reality. So how do you perceive, when you tie this into your family story that you were just saying, you heard what I just shared, how do you perceive the concept of objective reality in a world where individual perspectives, biases, and cultural differences shape our understanding of what is real?
Well, the first there you go. The first thing is right now we're in such a state of chaos. I'm speaking of America because America is so special. I know that a lot of other countries do experience some, but not half of what we experience as the indoctrination and the guys or even the just everything. They don't experience that the way we experience it. Mm-hmm. And repeat your question because my mind went somewhere else. Just repeat the question for me so I can get back on track.
So, like in my case, if I had to depended on fitting in with my friends and family, I wouldn't be who I was today. The key, the Kickstarter for me was not the Kickstarter, but the confirmation was when the judge stood up at the end of the case and said, I wish more Americans would come in here to do this. So how do you perceive the concept of objective reality in a world where individual perspectives, biases, and cultural differences shape our understanding of what is real?
Okay, so it's like you said, first we have to, get the things that have been covered, start learning those things, and we have to reach a critical mass in order for, the truth to fully be pushed and for it to become objective. Right now, we're not at critical mass. We see, in a sense, the opposition far outweighs us. And, even though we are physically here and everything is manifesting in front of us, essentially it's all spiritual. And, there are forces, and here's the thing. These forces will be on your boss, your kids, your family, which kind of ties into what we were speaking on, earlier about, conforming to the family. A lot of times those energies that are on them are the energies sent to distract you and to keep you from, fully being able to, be in the energy you need to be to righteously express some things. Because if you're if you're angry, you're frustrated, if you're sitting there yelling at kids because they're not listening, arguing with, your kid's dad, and, everybody's just in turmoil. You can't even properly express things. So, and this is where they say, we're at war. A lot of times when we say that, we're not necessarily speaking physically. We're speaking mentally, spiritually, emotionally. We are at war. And this is why it's so important, I guess you could say, to continually meditate and to continue to keep yourself focused on certain things. Like if you have an agenda and you know that your agenda is to seek the truth, is to educate yourself on all of these things that we're speaking on so that you can be a sovereign American citizen, then you do have to, it's work. It's not easy. You got to realize that you're going to have to fight for it. And then you have to realize that after you fight for it yourself, we still have the fight for the world. When we do get to the point where we do reach a critical mass, of course, there's going to be a tipping point. And once we all, like I said earlier, the earth itself is going to a certain frequency where anything that's not on that frequency is going to fall away. Once we are all at a similar frequency, there's going to be more understanding with each other, through each other, and for each other. And I do believe at that time, we won't have a choice, because I would say that there's only so much time for the, I guess you could say, chaos and free choice to continue. I think there is a time that we are coming to, and it might be another 1,000 years, where it's going to get up to a point of what is and what was intended in the beginning. And that's not subjective. That's very objective. There's no way around what was intended, and there's no way around universal laws. So eventually we will get to that. We will get to where I guess you could say we're all on the same page and we are all aware of the same truth. But as of right now, we are still, I guess you could say, in the maze and in the war of bringing it to the light.
I agree with that. And when you bring up education, we'll just bleed right into education and personal development. Pursuing education, both formal and informal, is important to many Americans, and U.S. citizens and people around the world. So this includes obtaining degrees from their perspective, acquiring new skills from all of our perspectives, staying updated in whatever the field of interest is, and engaging in lifelong learning. So I like how you're talking about higher level laws of universal laws, because people might believe in a speed limit, not knowing that it doesn't really apply to them. If only they knew who they really were, but they don't know who they really were because they don't know the universal law. So it's a spiral circle that keeps the family around you trapped, because they're trained by the oppressors, right? So they're trying
indoctrinated.
Right, they're indoctrinated. So in their minds, for better or for worse, they actually think they're trying to help you by keeping you what they believe will be out of trouble, not realizing that there is no such thing in trouble in that application, because you're operating on a higher frequency, higher level. So social mobility, here's your next question. Although social mobility exists, it's not equally accessible to everyone due to factors such as income, inequality, education, which we're really talking on, knowledge and stuff like that, and inherited advantages or disadvantages. So what are your thoughts on the accessibility of social mobility in our society, and how do the factors like income, inequality, and education impact the individual's upward mobility?
Okay, so honestly, that's everything. Some people, like myself, are guided away from our family structures so that we can expand, because I think they say, your subconscious can't even think or imagine something unless you've seen or heard it somewhere. Like, you can't even imagine things unless somewhere, somehow, it was either presented to you, or whether it be from a higher program or someone here on earth, you can't even imagine it. So if you're stuck in a certain family and you have no access, no way to get any further than that, then you're going to be stuck in whatever frequency, dynamic, or construct that is.
The generational curses.
Yes. Oh, I'm going to have to clap for that, because that's exactly what it is. So it takes the black sheep or the lone wolf or whatever it takes. And a lot of times it's circumstances and situations that even send this person off, because, who really thinks, as a child, who truly says, I just want to leave my family and go be off by myself? Like, nobody really, I think, says or thinks that. I think, well, I was a runner. So it wasn't that I wanted to be by myself. It was that I wanted to be away from what I seen, because something in me knew this is not, I love my family, but I'm not like my family. Even they'll tell you I'm the strange one. I'm just that one. But it takes for that, in order for there to be a growth and some type of catalyst that sparks the spiral path that we tend to be on, because it's not, we come across to these things again, but we always, it's either out, it's more information that we get as we come through the ebb and flow of these cycles that we go through, whether it be dealing with the dark nights of the soul, or however, if we're on a high or a low, we tend to come across some of the same lessons, but in a deeper understanding. And if it wasn't for the separation or the adventure, we wouldn't even have got there. Like we had to go on the narrow path, the one that few follow. And I'd say there is no mobility or social mobility if there is no movement. Wherever you're at, you're going to be stuck at. It either takes for you to go somewhere physically, or serious meditation to go somewhere mentally. Like if you can't, physically get out of your physical environment, it's going to take some serious meditation to access, the higher programmings or whatever it is that they're going to send to you. And when I say they, I mean, I guess you could say the forces of light, the creator, the ascended masters that have already passed on. There is other realms, and it is proven that our eyes and ears only pick up so much sound and light frequency. So it's proven that there are things that are interacting around us. And through meditation, some of us are able to start receiving those codes or messages or whatever it is. But you have to go somewhere, mentally, physically. You have to go somewhere to change that, to get away from whatever it is that your surroundings, whatever the construct is, whether it's, like you said, in your family generational curses, or whether it's in the school system, work system, however.
Well, just apply the equation to what you just said. I'm the equation guy instead of the variable guy. And when you said you have to be in a certain, well, here, I'm gonna tie it all together for you, right? So the word love you mentioned earlier, and most people use it as a verb, but it's really a noun, and it comes from Proto-Germanic lubo, L-U-B-O, with the two dots above it, and it means a different grade. So what happens is, speaking about how you're saying to change, to move, social mobility, whether it's a physical location, you want to get to the what you call a rich neighborhood, or you want to get from a poverty mindset to the generational curse breaker of wealth mindset, whatever it is, you're changing states of mind, right? So you're gonna have to leave your family because of love itself, which is, you are, like you said, the black sheep, you are the lone wolf, you are the outcast. Why? Because you are on that different level or that different frequency state. You're in a different state. Now, to make it all make sense, what I'm pointing out that you said that's so important, that I would give you applause for, is when you said you have to be in a certain state to even get to the point where you can receive or be aware of the downloads itself, because there's things beyond our quote unquote perspective until we exercise ourselves enough to tap into their existence or accept their existence. So that, and that little clause on education and personal development would be staying updated in their field of interest, see, like, you got the Akashic records all around us, right? That we could tap into and be part of the omnipresence knowledge. Like you said, we have, in order to envision it, we must have seen it first. That's why the vision is so important in the manifestation of goals, because in your subconscious it's tapped into the higher self and the most high and all the other love of dimensions, right? So I think that's really good what state you're in, and that could actually tie us into this health and wellness. And I want to hear what you got to say about this, because taking care of physical, most people think health and wellness is physical, and mental well-being is a significant focus of many. And it involves regular exercise, maintaining a balanced diet, seeking health care when needed, and prioritizing self-care practices. So just like we just mentioned, if you don't exercise your mind and that connection to the higher selves or higher energies or higher, whatever you want to call them, you have a weakness there, or a poor state of health and wellness in that area. Speak about that for us when it comes to being susceptible to the illusions.
Well, here's the thing. Could you said a couple different things in that question?
Take your time.
You know, first of all, it has to start in the mental. And essentially, I think for true health and wellness, it really truly starts with your spiritual, because everything is spiritual, and what's in the spiritual is manifesting in the physical. So truly, where we spend, a lot of people spend more of the time on their body, okay, but they're not spending anything on their spiritual. I think, in the end, it creates more of a demise than if you were on your spiritual practices like you should be. Me, myself, I am currently struggling with things of my physical body. But you have to realize that all starts in your mind, and that's not even, and now we're not even talking spiritual anymore. We're talking the mental, and we know that is affected by your spiritual. All of these things affect each other, really, because, let's say you're down physically, it's going to start affecting your mental. So then it's almost like a cycle. Maybe you could say it's like the Trinity. It's a 3-in-1. Really, they're all very important, but one affects the other. And the most important would be the spiritual, because we know these physical bodies are constantly decaying, and they will die off, even though our spiritual self will continue to be. So I guess you could say, coming back to the essence of yourself and in your full spirituality is going to be the most important, and your body should follow. I don't know if I answered your question or if I went down a rabbit hole.
No, I think you did, and I want you to keep going with this in mind. Tell me, add this into the pie crust, and let's see what you bake with it. So spending, when you said people focused on their body, right? You know what it made me think of? It made me think of like how people are so focused on having 5,000 followers on Facebook, and because that following can be considered your body. That is your body, right? So you're focused on getting the body, right? The people are focused on, and it could be the family. The body is also the group of people basically around you. So your family, the company you work for, the people that work for you, if you own the company, you're following on Facebook. So if the leadership is sick, if the leadership is mentally ill,
the whole body will be.
The whole body will be. Speak on that. Add that into with your pie crust and keep going.
Okay, yeah, you know what? And that brings me to the thought of the body of Christ. And I'm not speaking religiously. I don't do religion. Even though, I'm speaking of what we would consider, I guess you could say the mass that we're trying to reach. We haven't reached that yet, but that brings me to that thought. And you're right. If the leadership is not there, then everything else is going to crumble. But it also brings me to the thought of what are we ingesting around us? And I'm not talking about food. I'm talking about socially, what body have we put ourselves in? With our children, we can't just, we could, I guess you could say we could give them up for adoption, whatever, but like, that's not necessarily how things should go. And in a sense, sometimes you have to sacrifice some of yourself in order to plant seeds within them. So, we'll take family structure away from that. So let's go to our social and work structures. What are we ingesting around us? What type of body are we allowing ourselves to be a part of? Are we a part of a sick body? Are we a part of a health body? 9 times out of 10, those bodies are a great percentage of why our bodies look the way that they do, or what we're actually dealing with within our own body. Because we know that everything that we ingest, from what we're looking at, watching, corresponding with the things that we eat, they all take a big toll on it, whether how much exercise we're getting, whether we're not getting exercise. Every single thing that we are receiving, touch, sight, feel, hear, everything we're receiving is what really truly makes up who we are, and what it is also what has a defining mark on us. Let's say we're spiritual. I'm going to speak of myself again, because what better way than to be an example. Like I said, I'm struggling with my physical body. I'm overweight more than what I should be, or I don't really enjoy what I'm looking at. Then I have to consider, what am I truly ingesting all around me, and what do I have around me? Do I if I'm not enjoying this, what can I do differently? And we know, like, just dealing with certain things, dealing with certain people, being in a certain location, can take a toll on your physical strength, your energy. So then if you're constantly around things that are pulling your energy, then are you constantly in bed? Now you're not active enough. Now you're not doing this. There's so many things that I don't think we even consider, because we don't even have these talks to even get that deep into the levels of it. We just look at it as diet and exercise, not realizing that even having certain people around us can cause us to be in. I've heard people, being around certain people have literally caused them to become nauseous, or caused them to be extremely sleepy. There's certain forces, we already spoke about the English language itself is just a language full of spells. We're not even considering who have we interacted with that is manifesting these things on us. Yes. Sometimes we deal with our own choices and actions, and there's other times where there's certain things we're dealing with that are manifestations of maliciousness from others. And a lot of people don't take that into consideration because they don't believe in the spiritual world. So they don't realize that, just as much bad happens as there is good when it comes to the spiritual world. So there's just so many things. There's so many things within that that we could talk about, I think.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of the truth, and not like a person that actually has a my truth or my opinion. Is it's all intertwined and part of the truth. So you expressed a lot of things, like when you said about going to work, and what are you I'll just sum it up with osmosis. But through osmosis, what are you consuming, really, right? What are you ingesting? And that goes back to me saying to you earlier, and to the people earlier, now you see why it's so important for you to not be quiet when you are different. Not saying you gotta like beat them into conformity, of course that's not right, but let them know who you are and why you are, because what you're basically telling them is, I don't consume the same bullshit as you, or I don't consume bullshit. And let me tell you how what you're talking about is bullshit. Here's why. Boom. And to me, that's toxic. And I have to let you know that I don't willingly consume toxicity, right? Because it's poison to me. And this is why. And then they can learn to appreciate your difference, instead of, they may still, if they're going to talk shit about you behind your back, they're going to do that regardless. But at least now you can't say that you didn't tell them. And it's always the perfect day. So I think everything has a trade-off. It's a cause and effect, right? So
Amen.
When we're fighting for balance of what we see as our perspective of utopian life, right? We may have this wisdom and this knowledge, and at the same time, that puts us in a position where we don't have this glamorous million people body network, so that when we go and start a business, it's harder for us to scale up and grow to get to the point where we're self-sufficient, so to speak, quote unquote, and out of the rat race, so you can go work out every day and swim 5 miles a day and pamper yourself for 2 hours every AM when you get up.
See, you nailed it right there.
So it's a trade-off, right? And
right.
we have to accept when we look at ourselves as a whole, right? Yeah, we may lack here, but it's a balance of everything else. Because like you said earlier, the people that go to the gym every day, what percentage of them that have the perfectly fit body has the perfectly fit mind? Right. So we're fighting to get into position where we can balance everything out the way we believe. And if I was an all-star football player right now, had took that journey in life, would I be the exact same person with the exact same perspectives I am today? Chances are likely not exactly the same, right? And if you were supermodel Shelly doing Victoria's Secret covers for the last 20 years, the chances of you being exactly the same mentality and wanting what you want for society will probably be a little different as well, right?
Right. So I guess it's necessary.
Always the perfect day. So with that, right, I want to go ahead and give a segue into food, because food is not just what we eat. Like you mentioned, food is anything that we consume. So it's our thoughts, the atmosphere around us. So how do you think our perceptions of, and when I say this, remember, it's not just what we actually eat physically. Anything that we ingest, thoughts, our food, we're consuming it as consumers. So how do you think our perceptions of healthy and unhealthy foods, or let's just use the word consumption, have been influenced by societal messaging and marketing? And what role do personal preference and cultural backgrounds play in shaping our dietary quote unquote choices?
Well, here's the thing. It has a lot to do with all of it, because it goes back to what we said, where, we're people like us are really less than 5% of the population. You know what I mean? People who are free thinkers, people who are truly studying, searching, we're not biased, because a lot of people who study and search, they're still biased to a certain color or this or this. I'm talking about those of us who really truly have reawakened to the essence of ourselves. And I like how you said fractals earlier, because in essence, we are all fractals of the source, but there's differences in the frequency of those fractals and where we land. But, so for 90% of the population, because that other 4% are the puppets to the 1%. But so the other 90% is I like that. Definitely geared and guided by, whatever commercial. Because here's the thing, like even protein, like let's just talk about food, because we know we're talking about more than just food, but just food. They call it protein bar that's supposed to be healthy, but that's just a glamorized candy bar. Like there's nothing healthy about this stuff when you're reading chemicals in the ingredients, So it's like they get these constructs and then they tell you, you can have plastic surgery to fix this or do that, and basically, as long as you're keeping up with the 90% and the Joneses and the Hiltons and the the Kardashians and whoever else, then you're great. You got 4,000 or 5,000 followers because you know how to pose your butt at the right angle, and life is good, and that is, it's so crazy, because in today's time, there's less people wanting to be doctors and lawyers, which, that's another story, because there's a reason why they call them practicing physicians, because they're practicing. They're not really medical, there's no real healing there. So anyways, the reason why they're not wanting to become practicing physicians and lawyers and this and that is because everybody wants to be a social media star. It's crazy, because we didn't have that. Even let's just say when I was in high school, I graduated in 2006. So that just tells you a little bit of my age right now. We didn't know what a social media model was. We didn't even have Facebook yet. Like, we were still doing the dial-up. I think we were talking on MySpace server. I don't even remember, because I was not allowed a lot of those things. And when I snuck them, it was just here and there. But which in another sense was a blessing for me, because I didn't ingest some of that stuff and it wasn't normal for me. So I didn't even get a Facebook till I was like 24 or 25. But so needless to say, like, just in that short amount of time, the society has brainwashed people into social media buffoonery, like, because that's what it is. And and don't get me wrong, anything can be a tool. Anything can be utilized for good. Like they say, it wasn't, the rock a rock in the hands of an intruder is different than the rock in the hands of David. One can hurt people and one saved them. Like, just like with guns, it depends on who's holding the gun. It's not necessarily the gun that's bad. It's the mind behind it. So just like with the social media, it can be a good thing. Like, this is how I truly believe that we are going to reach critical mass, because they're not going to see it anywhere else. We have to use this. You have to fight fire with fire. So it's like, but for the majority that don't have the mind, they don't try to think for themselves. They don't even know what thinking for themselves is. It's created it's almost like hypnotism. Like, this is what we have to get the likes. We have to get the followers. If I don't have likes and followers, I'm nothing, and it creates even certain mental illnesses and depression and anxiety. Like, you got these kids, I've been watching videos of kids beating up their teacher, pepper spraying their teacher for taking their phone away in class. I think one kid even, it was a boy. So I recently watched a girl pepper spray her teacher, and then I seen the boy beat this woman down because she took his Game Boy or phone or something. And it's like, are you kidding me? Like, what switch was in there that was flipped when all this social media came about? But but for people like us, we can see this. Not only do we get an immense amount of knowledge on here, there's things that I have been able to tap into via Instagram and Facebook that I would have never even searched up on Google. So for one, I guess it depends on your algorithm, because, whatever you're searching for, the internet has a funny way of bringing it to you. And then, this is a way that we're going to be able to get these words out. So, depending on where your leadership is, which goes back to your mind, or even, the head of your body, it is going to be a big part in what exactly all this does for you. And so I guess back to your original question, yes, there is an extreme the word I'm looking for is not on my tongue. But yeah, yes, and it very much affects society. The commercials, the construct. Society is based off of that and nothing else at this point.
It's interesting, because I remember students fighting with the teachers. You know what I mean? I remember ranking on a teacher, because he actually used to rank on us all the time, right? I don't know, ranking, what they call it now, joking, whatever.
Yeah, roasting.
The teacher used to roast the students was roasting teachers, but one day I roasted the teacher so bad he started crying and he kicked me out. I mean, I was an interesting kid. But at the same time, I was in like advanced gifted program studies and stuff like that. I was bored in school because I didn't from skip school, go play Nintendo at home, to go have Burger King breakfast, smoke out, come back. You know what I'm saying? So he was doing it all. I think tying it into the food as a consumption thing, and tie it into what you're saying, so it just became such the popularity thing came into play because of the social media. So now when that happens, instead of the students at that one school or that one hallway knowing about it, and then over the week the rest of the school knows about it, now it's around the world in 20 seconds, and it appears to be the norm that all of society is dealing with, and it magnifies that activity because of the algorithm versus like activity like this, right? Like this won't go viral tomorrow like that will. You know what I'm saying?
No, right.
So, but this is why the critical mass is so important, because when you talk to other people, they blame the algorithm because that's the cheapest excuse they got. When in reality, once we reach critical mass, we'll have everybody searching for content like this. Instead of that, the algorithm will actually adjust, and they'll be forced to change to suit the need of what's the demand of the people. So the classification of what foods is healthy versus unhealthy, we know is subjective. So once we, the people of America, decide to change what we feel is healthy or we want to consume, right, the algorithm will adjust and feed us more of what it believes we're saying is healthy for us. Once we, the people of America, decide on what the packaging and marketing techniques should be, knowing that they can create the illusions of healthfulness or whatever, or quality through misleading claims or attractive branding, the algorithm will be forced to change and feed us what we actually demand. The diets and food trends that are now popular will no longer be popular because we, the people, decided we want to consume something different. And just like with food, the portion sizes and serving suggestions are all depicted on the food packaging or suggested by the restaurants. So once you stop eating that, they're going to have to either change their menu or go out of business. And that's how the algorithm is really our best friend, even though most people actually blame the algorithm for the state of social media interactions today, because it's easier to blame the algorithms than find fault in ourselves. Which brings us to this.
I have to agree with you.
Thank you. Which brings us to this: leisure and recreation. Americans often place importance on leisure activities and recreational pursuits to relax and unwind. And this could include hobbies, sports, entertainment, travel, and cultural experiences. But if we look at all the other stuff we talked about before, so far, level playing fields, social mobility, objective reality, equality of opportunity, absolute freedom, all of that and the more kind of defines what you even have the capacity to believe you find leisure or recreation in. Speak on that as far as the illusion.
Well, here's the deal. I'm going to be honest with you. I think that, and here's, I'm going to say this and then I'm going to answer your question. This goes to show the amount of great minds that are arising in America, because America is targeted like no other country right now. And I'm speaking in every single way, from the way our commercials are, the way we're indoctrinated, the way the food is targeted at us. Other countries, half of this stuff is illegal. You can't even get Mountain Dew like you would get it here. Like, so there is great minds rising up, and the dark forces know that. And this is why we are targeted in the way that we are targeted. Just repeat your question one more time, because I wanted to say that before I did it, and then I got myself off.
Sure. Basically, just speak on the fact of how everything that we've built on so far actually creates the illusion based on limitations, income, currency,
and the leisure
access.
Okay.
Yeah. So what leisure and recreation is actually tainted and controlled and manipulated and marketed also because of access. Basically, what you may even feel like true leisure or recreation is to you individually based on your access and limitations.
Well, here's the thing. So let's say this, because and I wanted to make the point of the great minds rising and the reason why we're being targeted here. Mm-hmm. And the point is the way this is set up, we don't get true leisure time. And here's the other thing. We are programmed. Let's just, for instance, say this. You know, they say the good place to take the kids would be like a water park in summer, right? Let's think about how this is. You have to stand in line for hours just to get on one ride. Everything is jacked up. We're told that this is leisure time. And when you really break it down, when you get there, I took my kids to the water park last year. I had no fun. I was constant. And I think because I have that eye that I could see, all I could see was I could just see the program. That's all I could see. They tell you it's fun, but really when you're there, you're hollering, waiting in line. The kids are fussing because we got to wait an hour and a half to get on the slide. We're spending $20 for one slice of pizza. This is not fun. Who said that this was fun? And I just kept sitting here thinking like, I'll never do this again. I'll never do this again. Took them to knots. I'll never do this again. Like,
Right.
these are things that, everybody wants to go to Disneyland, everybody wants to go to Knott's Berry Farm, but then when you really look at it for what it is, that's not fun. And then when you take into the consideration the program in itself for the work week, needing to take care of kids, hopefully you're up on your spiritual practices, good, so you're not getting too thrown off throughout the week. By the time the weekend comes around, or by the time you get to a point where you have time for that, you don't even want to do nothing. You want to sit there and do research or just kind of chill, because you've been completely expended or completely drained throughout your whole week, dealing with the different energies, dealing with your workload, dealing with your family, getting them back and forth to school. Mm-hmm. So it's like, when it gets to leisure time, like, let's just sleep. Let's just sleep.
Leisure time is stressful.
No, it is. And here's the thing. I sing, I write music. So one would say that would be my leisure time. Yeah. But I don't even have time for leisure time. And here's the other part of it. That's my fault, because we could say that we definitely can maybe reconstruct things easier. But again, it goes back to the program. Like, none of this makes it easy for you to do the things that are truly, really worth it, that are truly, priceless, and things that are actually going to create changes. They say music moves the soul. So right. If you truly have some type of musical talent and you actually put, some nourishing meat out there in a song, there's so much capability within that. But if you're, living in America, working 9 to 5, and have children and a family that are obviously on a different frequency, good luck with a lot of that. And I'm not saying, I'm not trying to make an excuse, because we can force a change, but it takes the energy for that. And this is where we're building up momentum.
Absolutely. And, that reminds me, I remember being the kid that was like, because how I don't know, I ain't gonna say every parent, but parent used to be always blaming us for like why they were unhappy in life. Like, I gotta stay here and do that and do that. And I was like, wow, just don't just do what you want to do. Like, I would rather see you go and do something you're happy with than to have a pair of sneakers. You know what I'm saying? So, but with the notion of a level playing field in many aspects of life, there's an inherited advantages or disadvantages that can influence outcomes, making the concept of a completely level playing field illusory. Just like you're speaking with Disney World. I've never been to Disney World. I have no. I don't like crowd. I'm not a big fan of crowds. I don't like being herded around like cattle. I don't like the sardine feeling. I don't like $20 slices of pizza for no reason. And I don't like waiting in line for 2 hours for something that's 20 seconds long. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Now when you look at it, right, there's a different world. That same place, that same state, that same, if you call Disneyland a state, like a place, right? That same state is totally different based on your financial situation, right? Because if you come in and pay I don't know, I'm gonna throw an imaginary sum out there because I don't know, I've never been. But let's say you pay $5,000 extra and get the cut in line next in line pass for everything for your family. Now it becomes a little bit more enjoyable because you can just decide, oh, let's go try this, and you're next in line, right? So finance and financial planning, managing personal finances, budgeting, quote unquote, saving for the future, and planning for retirement are important concerns for individuals in the quote unquote United States. Financial stability and achieving long-term financial goals are commonly prioritized. But what would happen if in reality we really don't need to work for what we would call currency, but what many refer to as money? And because you're alive, you've heard me say this before on the channel, and I want to hear what you want to think about this. We cannot have what the Constitution refers to as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in a system that revolves around currency because of all the inherited inequalities. So if we remove the currency from the system, you would have absolute freedom to experience your goals, dreams, and reality. You could make music and still take the kids to Disneyland and not have to choose over gear or a ticket to Disneyland. How do you think that'll factor into the solution, and what would be the outcome?
Well, here's the thing. The whole prison system of the currency and the 40-hour work week, you know, with that comes some of those luxuries, which are in a sense not luxuries when you really get to the basis of it, which is what we just did. Mm-hmm. The earth itself provides abundance. You know, we're the only animals on earth that pay to live here. Monkeys don't do it. Birds don't do it. You know, lions don't do it. Matter of fact, we're destroying their habitats to where they're almost unable to live here as well.
We're gonna start charging them next.
Right. So we're destroying the most abundant thing we have, which is Mother Nature. And so if we were to get out of this prison, we would have freedom, because where the time we spend working that 40 hours or whatever, we might spend 3 or 4 hours in the morning tending to the garden, maybe go, you know, Dad and Bubba just went and got a deer, you know, whatever, you know, which was quality time, which most people these days consider hunting fun, you know, and it's bringing you back to nature. There's all these things that now we consider, leisure time, when in actuality, these are ways that we would normally be free and survive. You know, it wouldn't be leisure time no more. It would just be getting dinner for the family, which how enjoyable could that be? And then you have the rest of the day to write your song, and now everybody's at the campfire celebrating because we just got this big deer and we have plenty of meat. We're canning some for the winter, and the other half we're making tomorrow, and we're going to throw a party on, you know, like all of these things we don't get because of the prison that we're in, because of the oppression that we are under. And it's really sad all the way around. The fact that it's happened, the fact that, you know, it was unjust, but you know, people take slavery and they, you know, might look at me as a white woman and say, well, what do you know about slavery? And they don't realize, you know, we have been in cycles of slavery for thousands of years. You know, the most recent one was the transatlantic slave trade, which we are all aware of, you know, and it's unfortunate. Yes, it's unjust. Yes, it was horrible. But if you have allowed the cycle of oppression to blind you into thinking that you're still not oppressed, then I am sorry, they've won you. You've been bamboozled, because we are very much oppressed. I don't care what color you are, unless you're in that top percentile and you're a Rockefeller or a Gates or you're Oprah's cousin, which she probably don't even get the benefits anyways. I don't know. But anyways, unless you're something like that, you're definitely, you're not free. Even when you're making $100,000, you know, like what was that one song? More money, more problems. You know, until you get to a point where you're just making ridiculous, like you're in the billion, you know, you're not free, because you have to manage that. There's so many things that come with that. There's the taxes you have to pay, and the this and the land tax, and you got to pay your yacht tax, and you know, and you could very easily become like one of us again if you don't do that right. So it's like, you know, it's unfortunate that within this construct we're oppressed, and for those that don't see that, you know, I think that's very sad, and it goes to show you how the matrix works so well, to the point where people are willing to defend it and willing to tell you off and say that you're wrong from it. But yeah, the freedom, I guess, would come within the fall of that. It's only in the.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. It's only in the
fall of the currency, and in the fall of that system, will we ever be free? Like it has to go, because, like you said, it breaks us into. There would be no homelessness if we didn't have this. Right. There would only be villages. Now, there might be excommunicated tribal members or village members, you know, for those who are sick-minded and clearly can't be within the village. You know, of course, they'll be exiled or whatever, which has happened, you know, in times when there was structures like that. But in a currency, in a environment like the way, or in the structure in the way that we live it, where we are basically fuel funded and live off of money, we'll never be free. Never.
And you know, that that sickness. I did a video the other day, and I showed how $1 million today was like $40,000. I forget what year I picked exactly to show, but it was like, I don't know, like 1886 or something, right? So if you had $40,000 in 1886, like you were a millionaire by today's standards. So civic engagement and community involvement, I think is really, I'm really grateful that you brought up the fact of how we are actually, despite our so-called race, because that's even a sickness to believe itself. Once you get into the study and know, because what they're going to say is post-racial society, despite progress and racial disparities and systemic racism still persist, indicating that we've not yet achieved a post-racial society. In reality, the new race is, are you conscious or not?
Yes, I agree.
And that's because of the civic engagement and community involvement. Many individuals in the quote unquote United States prioritize being what they call active citizens and participating in their state of mind, so their communities. And this can involve volunteering, advocating for quote unquote causes, engaging in political activities, or even participating in local organizations. So if we were the black sheeps of the family, turn us into outcasts in society, the new racism is against consciousness. How do you see that fitting into the illusion?
I do agree with you. I do believe even within the conscious movement, it's kind of reversed, where before we've seen a lot of, after in America, we've seen a lot of segregation towards people of melanin, people of color. And it's reversed in the conscious society, where people like my color, or people that are fair or white, are considered either pretenders or someone who's not woke but is just reading and regurgitating because of our skin color. They say that that you have to have melanin, which there's a couple different types of melanin, and essentially I actually have melanin, but it's just not the melanin you have. But they say you have to have melanin in order to be conscious, or in order to be connected to source. And I feel that is a very ignorant statement. I do believe in the connection. And some things I do believe that there is pros in having melanin. We can see that people with melanin are able to receive sunlight better than people like, say, my color. But then we can even say that might not even be true, because we didn't ever know of melanoma and carcinoma, until recently. So that probably just goes back to the food. So that's a whole nother subject. But yeah, it's actually flipped. A lot of people disregard me because I'm white, in the conscious community or in the spiritual community. Not everybody, but a good majority. And those who have taken the time to speak with me or get to know me, clearly have accepted me, and they see me for who I am. But unfortunately, it's like a reverse. It's a reverse. It's like being judged by the color of your skin, but except for being judged off of being white instead of being melanated. So I know you probably haven't experienced that considering your skin tone, but it's something that I've experienced a lot, actually.
You go. Okay, I'm glad that you brought that up for the people, because there is when you go back and look at the one world civilization that was present prior to the collapse and the reset, and the population was mixed, and they were all deemed as equal in society, and they all had the same elevated knowledge and wisdom compared to societies we have today around the world. But again, you would have to be in that state of mind to have researched the antiquity versus belief of history that was given to us to know that and accept that, right? So
right.
I'm glad you brought that up. The point I was making was that look at the social credit score that's coming. It's already here, but they're going to digitize it, right? So,
right.
And then they're going to connect it to Fed now and say, because you have an open mind, you're going to not have as much spending capability. We're going to shut you down because we don't want you to get a platform as large as Oprah. We don't want you to access the treasures that are should be entrusted in you, so that you can go and build your own network like CNN, because then you're going to be sharing shit that we don't want out there. So we're going to purposely suppress you, make things difficult for you, keep you out of the system, out of the mainstream, so that we can keep our agenda, right?
That's you're right. Racism. It's already happening.
Yeah, that's the new racism.
It would just be worse when they have control over it.
Right. So it's right. So if every United States citizen / American woke up tomorrow and had access to unlimited dollars, which is the way it actually should be, once you know what the financial system is and who we are supposed to be, then there would be nothing stopping you, right, from doing that. Right. So as of the current state, though, the new battle is the conscious community. And I don't mean, when I say conscious, I don't really mean any type of physical appearance. I just mean level of thought, right? So that is the new shun. Like we said, when you go to work, you're afraid to talk and tell people who you are out of fear of repercussions of what'll happen to you at work. Doesn't that sound like the sold to us history of what it was like to be so-called black in the 50s?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the same thing. That's what I'm saying. So with that on the table, I think that ties into the beauty is objective beauty, and objective beauty is subjective and varies across cultures and individuals, making it challenging to define an objective standard. And that's because of personal values and beliefs. The individual values and beliefs and personal growth are significant aspects of everyday life for many. Yeah. And that's the default of the illusion, because what people are holding on to as their personal beliefs and values, they may not yet know that they're actually exercising a lack of true morality, a lack of true honor, but they're hanging on to it as their belief because that's what they were sold by everything we've talked about so far. Right? Because that could involve exploring spirituality, practicing faith, or engaging in personal reflection and or self-improvement. But again, if your leadership is telling you that everything that's truly positive is negative, now you're only going to worship and admire absolute negativity.
Well, and this is why a lot of us haven't gotten to the critical mass, because we believe it may even be wrong. You know, going to a certain extent of studying is taboo or not right, or, you know, you shouldn't delve into that or this or that, just depending on the programs that we were, brought up in.
Mm-hmm. Two last things I want to cover real quick, and I appreciate your time today. Perfection. The pursuit of perfection is often unattainable and can create unrealistic expectations and feelings of inadequacy. Like you mentioned earlier, having to go to work versus being able to go hunting with the family in the AM, or chop the deer up in the AM or whatever, smoke it, write a song in the evening, sit around a campfire. That may be the utopia for all of us. But the money injection, the addiction to the paper currency, the system, the civic engagement telling you that you're supposed to have money, and when there ain't been no money in circulation since the 30s, but people don't know that, so they think they have money, which is just further, observation.
Well, you can't even own land now.
You can't own land. You never could own land. And,
even when you own it, you don't own it. You're still paying taxes or whatever.
Right. Just like the house, just like the car, etc. Yeah. If you registered your house, if you have a mortgage, like you don't own nothing. And they're just now telling the people, oh, by 2030, you're going to own nothing and be happy, because they don't realize that that's already been the way it's been for the last century, because they don't know nothing. But how do societal expectations of perfection impact individuals, self-perception and well-being, and what alternatives to the pursuit of perfection can promote a healthier outlook when we factor in everything that we've covered thus far?
Okay, so first of all, the construct of perfection, or the way that society has considered what it is to be perfect or to look nice or this or that, is another big reason why there is mental issues in America. Because for those who are unable to live up to it, we run across, the depression, the anxiety, You know, maybe even the frustration, the angriness, you know, being mad, upset, all of these things that take you from a, you know, a good proper energy. And here's the deal, you know, I'd say it's the pursuit of perfection that it essentially gets us to wake up. So even though society's construct may not be the truth or what perfection is, I think it is within that, or within the pursuit of that, which is why some of us wake up. Because if you think about it, you know, a lot of things that we, and myself, have come across or even searched for on my road to, you know, I guess you could say, I don't want to say financial perfection, because, but you know, it doesn't matter to me, but I guess you could say on my search for normalcy, I guess. I don't know. And that was incorrect when I was going for it, even though I was put on the correct path by going for it, because we were searching for it within the construct of what we were taught, when we ended up stumbling across another road, which is what leads us to where we are on the path to truth and the path to righteousness and the path to being sovereign being. So I think for some people, you know, I'm going to quote a scripture. You know, all things work together for good to them that love the Most High, that are walking according to the purpose. Even the bad things work together for good, because at the end of the day, if we look back at our life, we can see so many things that went wrong, but for us, it had to happen that way.
Yeah.
Because it was within that formula that we, you know, sprouted, or whatever happened that triggered us into our awakening. So the construct of perfection isn't good, but I think it's within the search of perfection where we start to find ourselves. Now, some find themselves still in that construct, and some we find ourselves walking on another path, and that is towards the truth.
I agree. I like the fact of how you stumbled around there in the beginning, because it really shows that the difficulty of how do you define what perfection is, and there's truly no blanket statements. And that's the beauty of not trying to convert people, but giving them an idea of what the destination should be.
There you go.
Because then you can be great in who you are and see how that greatness helps the community arrive at the destination. There's no point in making everybody a doctor. There's no point in trying to make everybody a lawyer. Find out what you're good at, what you enjoy, and then see how that fits into the community's walk to reach this destination, or the nation's walk to become this destination. And
right.
Then, you know, that's a sustainable community. So the last part I have to cover here, I want to go over, is this quote unquote happily ever after, right? The idea of a perfect and everlasting happiness, because the word happy comes from the word happen, which means by chance. And what most people want is joy, and they don't know there's a difference.
Right.
So the idea of a perfect and everlasting happiness is a fictional construct that doesn't reflect the complexities and ups and downs of real life relationships and experiences, like you just said. The way I've said what you said before, where like it's basically the underpinnings of my statement, it's always the perfect day, because up or down, for better or for worse, you're going to be so glad that it happened that way 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years down the road, because A, B, C, and D. And another way to say that is all time affects all time, all the time. And then you mentioned earlier in translation, what you go through is preparing you for who you're supposed to become. I'm gonna like translate it, what you said earlier. So what are your thoughts on the idea of happily ever after, and how does it relate to the complexities and realities of relationships and life experiences?
So because of what you just said, and being that most people are unaware of the true meaning of things, we're not really searching for happily ever after, are we? We're searching for a sustainability, a contentness, a life where we don't have to, I guess you could say, fight all the time. Whether it's fight to get up and go to work, fight the clock, fight this, fight our feelings when we don't feel like being at work because we know we have to, because we can't lose that $100 that day, or that whatever, however much it is, it makes me think of, we're not searching for necessarily happily ever after, but just to be sustained, maybe just to be able to be content, to be able to be proper, righteous, and at the end of the day, to be able to be the sovereign beings that we are. I mean, that would be my answer for that. Because at the end of the day, even when you have everything that you want, there is different energies that you deal with still. And I'm not going to say it's necessarily unhappiness or this or that. There's moods, there's memories, there's when you're given certain visions or gifts, there's feelings that come behind that. So to say that we're searching for happily ever after, I think is probably the most false statement, or the most false constructed idea that they could try to hook people with. Because when you really get down to it, you're really searching for sustainability and the right to be, just the right to be and eat without paying somebody, the right to breathe, the right to drink water without having to pay for it. Like, that doesn't necessarily equate to happy, but it does equate to just being able to be. So I guess what we're searching for is the ability to be.
I like that, the ability to be, and I think that totally parallels with my view of, we can't have life, liberty, and a pursuit of happiness and it be equal unless we get rid of the currency, to the point where if you want to wake up tomorrow and start the Shelley Foundation, you should be able to do it, right?
Yep.
You should be able to build the building you want to build, as long as it's not causing injury to anybody else. We all should be able to do whatever it is we want to do that day.
And that's what it is about being sovereign.
Then you build.
We're not infringing on others, and yeah.
Go ahead with
I'm
the
sorry.
sovereign. No, because that's absolutely the point I was trying to make. Because that's what I was going to bring up in agreement with that. Because that's the difference when I say I'm American and not a United States citizen. That's what I'm talking about. Just go ahead and speak on the sovereignty for us real quick in closing.
So that's what it is to be sovereign. Is to not only be able to do what you need to do without somebody infringing on you, but we're also not infringing on others. Everybody has the right to be. So within the sovereignty, there's not going to be no rapes, murders. There's not going to be none of that, because if we're all acting as sovereign beings, we're not only we're not limiting others, and we're not being limited ourselves. And within that, I think it has the possibility to truly have a flourishing society of the ability to be and be content.
Ability to be. Thank you, Shelley. Any closing remarks on the way out here?
No, I think and it's at 144,000 all the way up.
Get it. The ability to be, people, you heard it. Right out, Shelley. All right, thank you for joining today. Pasha Paroh, YNet7. Thank you for tuning. Peace. Shelley, say bye to people.
Y'all have a good day.
Pasha Paroh, we out.